So hi, everybody. Thanks for being here at this DPLA Member Meet Up. My name is Emily Fotenhauer. I am the Digital Strategist and Grants Manager for WILS, Wisconsin Library Services. I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin. And I'm here today with my WILS colleague, Kristen Whitson, and also with Kelly Hicks of the Community Archiving Workshop, which is an initiative of AMIA, the Association of Moving Image Archivists. And we're going to talk today, we're going to share the Digital Readiness Toolkit, which is a set of resources that our hub, Recollection Wisconsin, recently launched to support small and under-resourced cultural heritage organizations in building and managing their digital collections. So I'm going to start things off by talking about how we got that toolkit going, kind of the impetus behind it and the process we used to create it. And then I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, and she's going to do a little tour, sort of walk through of the toolkit contents itself. And then we'll hear from Kelly, and she's going to introduce the Community Archiving Workshop, or CAW model, and share how we're starting to work together with CAW to develop kind of the next generation of the toolkit that will incorporate some more guidance for working specifically with audiovisual collections in small and under-resourced institutions. So this is all meant to be very informal, it's meeting style. So as we go, please feel free to use chat, add your questions, thoughts, links you have, and then we'll have some time for open conversation as well. All right, so next slide, please. So just a little bit about our hub to start off. Recollection Wisconsin was established as Wisconsin Heritage Online in 2005, and we joined the DPLA network in 2016. And this has always been a multi-type collaboration, a consortium. Our hub is led by 6 governing partners, and those are the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, which operates as our state library agency, the Wisconsin Historical Society, Milwaukee Public Library, Marquette University, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And WILS, Wisconsin Library Services, which is an independent 501c3, provides the project management and staffing for the program. And unlike a lot of DPLA hubs, Recollection Wisconsin does not provide any kind of digitization services or metadata creation services. So instead, we provide guidance and documentation to help contributors take on that work themselves. So one thing that we're always looking to do is find ways to build local capacity and really to support public libraries, local historical societies, and other smaller institutions to help them contribute to Recollection Wisconsin and to DPLA. Next slide. So in 2018, sorry, we learned about a new funding opportunity that was available from the NHPRC. That's the National Historical Publications and Records Commission. That's the granting arm of NARA. They had a new funding opportunity called Archives Collaboratives, and we received an Archives Collaboratives planning grant in 2019, and then later an implementation grant to plan and seed what we call the Digital Readiness Community of Practice.
You want more coffee?
And if you're not muted, please make sure you're muted if you can. Let's see, so the goal was to build a network to empower small, rural, under-resourced, and underrepresented cultural heritage institutions in Wisconsin to provide online public access to their historical records. So to develop this plan, Recollection Wisconsin and WILS partnered with the Wisconsin Historical Society, and we really focused on the society's local history affiliate network. So that was an existing long-standing network of more than 410 organizations around the state, including local historical societies, historic preservation organizations, county historical societies, historic house museums, exactly the kinds of institutions we were hoping to reach. In 2019, we did an online survey, and we hosted 5 in-person community conversations to gather information about needs and gaps and interests from this community related to digital readiness. So that's a good time to go to the next slide. I'm going to define how we've defined digital readiness. And the definition that we use is having the knowledge, tools, and resources to digitize and provide access to archives and historical collections, and to care for those digital collections over time. So in other words, being ready to start a successful digitization project and to maintain that project for the future so that people in your community, your state, and around the world can continue to use and learn from your digital collections. So this is kind of our working definition and foundation for this initiative. Next slide. I won't go through all of this data, but I just wanted to show a little bit of the numbers from the findings of our survey. We had 117 responses from local history affiliates in 2019. And one of the things that really stood out to us in particular was the first point on the left, which was that 75% of the respondents did not have any policies or plans or written guidelines or other documentation in place that informed their digitization work. So this is a thread that we really emphasized throughout the toolkit as we created it to emphasize the importance of documentation. We created some templates. We identified examples of collection development policies, inventories, all kinds of documentation to really encourage people to document the work they're doing, document the decisions they're making. After this information gathering stage, we brought together a group of local history practitioners for a strategic planning process to outline what this community practice might look like. And one of the goals that this group identified was related to skills, knowledge, and capacity building. So the strategic plan at that stage said, Wisconsin's public history organizations will have a roadmap for undertaking digital collections creation and management. They'll have access to best practices, guidelines, and tools that accommodate a range of needs and resources, and they'll understand how to use those resources to support local goals and capacities. So next slide. So that charge really informed the implementation stage of the project and of the grant. We kicked off that stage in 2020 with a second grant from NHPRC. That's when we had the opportunity to bring on Kristen Whitson. And all of our work during this stage was guided by an 11-member launch committee of local history practitioners around the state. You can see that list here. So during this time, we laid the groundwork for what ultimately became the Digital Readiness Toolkit. We started out by breaking down the idea of digital readiness into some specific steps or focus areas, and Kristen will talk about those in a moment. So that was the digital readiness levels. And we went through many rounds of feedback and kind of iteration on those levels, both with input from experts in the field and from our local history practitioners. We worked with the launch committee, and we heard from practitioners over and over again that things they really wanted were accessible and non-technical language and a practical guidance they could consult as they undertook their digital work. So our launch committee dedicated many meetings over the course of the year to toolkit development. They identified exemplary models to borrow from. So some of the models that we used in creating this were the STEPS program from AASLH, the American Association for State and Local History, the Sustainable Heritage Network at Washington State University, and the reorg workbook from ICROM, which is the International Collections Management Consortium. I forget the exact what ICROM stands for, but all of those models as ways to deliver this information. The launch committee also articulated some user personas to better understand the target audience for this material, and then provided feedback on multiple drafts of the toolkit structure, layout, and content. To respond to the need for clear language, we created a glossary, and to respond for the need for better documentation, we created a project planning worksheet, which is sort of a template to outline all those decisions that you make along the way as you're developing a digital project. And then finally, as the last round of review before we launched the toolkit, we asked several practitioners to beta test it by using it in their own work. So this has been really community driven and community defined throughout the process of building this. And it officially launched in June of 2022. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to share a little bit about what's actually in the toolkit.
Lovely. Thanks, Emily. And sorry, my computer sometimes randomly goes to the next slide without asking it to. So if that happens, I'll just back right up. So as Emily said, the digital readiness levels, which I am going to show you in just a minute, are billed as, and they are, a structured roadmap for public history organizations to plan and sustainably grow their digital initiatives in order to improve access to collections. And that's a long explanation to say that the digital readiness levels is one of the ways that we responded to the community when they continued to ask, where do we start with our digital readiness projects or our digital projects? So the digital readiness levels are set up in seven different focus areas. And I'm going to show you an image of the levels in just a moment, but I want to kind of tell you how it's set up first, and then we'll talk about how it all came together. So where the levels are organized around these 7 different focus areas, and they align with the project stages that we have observed in cultural heritage projects over the years. None of this will be a surprise to any of you, but this is a way that we tried to break this down into some manageable pieces for local history organizations. So I'm just going to go through these real quick. The first one is plan and prioritize. What is the project plan and how do you decide what to digitize? Obtaining permissions. How do you know if you can share those materials? Digitization, so actually doing the digitizing. Description, which talks about metadata and how to describe the materials. Sharing and access. So how do you share what you have digitized? Storage and maintenance. What's the storage and long-term maintenance plan for all the digitized materials? And then evaluation. How will you know that what you set out to do was achieved? So organizations certainly don't need to follow these in order, which is a recurring theme, but it can be helpful for them to start at number 1 and go through to number 7 if they're starting a project from scratch. Organizations can also sort of just jump into whatever focus area they need to if they have specific questions. So then each of those 7 focus areas is organized into 3 tiers, bronze, silver, and gold. And the tiers are not meant to be successive or to make anybody, feel any kind of way about trying to get to a gold level or staying only at a bronze level. These tiers have 3 different areas of focus. So the activities in the bronze level help to lay a foundation for successful digital work. The bronze level is all about defining goals, shoring up documentation and storage arrangements, and understanding options for moving forward. The silver level is about identifying, planning, and carrying out a small-scale digital project. So digitizing, describing, sharing, and storing a focus group of materials to test drive the processes and standards from the bronze level. And then the gold level is all about refining and sustaining the digital work. So strengthening a digital program by adopting key policies and enhancing the ongoing digital project work with more advanced standards and procedures. So again, organizations certainly do not have to start at bronze and strive for gold in any of these areas. They can and should choose goals for their organization's needs. All right, one last thing before I show you the levels. We also include a set of check as you go questions that we recommend that users use as prompts to check in with themselves and their project partners as the work progresses. These questions encourage folks to document their work, to look ahead to future sustainability, to reaffirm that the work that they're doing is in line with the mission and values of their organization and is meeting the needs of their community. Okay, so here's the digital readiness levels. And I recognize some of the names in here. I know some of you have seen this before. I think some of you helped contribute to the editing process. So thank you very much for those of you who contributed to that. These are the digital readiness levels, and that's how all that information comes together in this framework. So of course, as we all know from working with organizations and in our own projects, these tidy categories and incremental steps are much messier in the real world. Chances are an organization may be further along in one area than in another. So an organization might be following gold level recommendations for digitizing, but only at the silver level for description and at the bronze level in other areas. Or maybe they're all the way to the gold level with photograph collections and just getting started on permissions with oral histories or something along those lines. So all of these approaches to digital readiness, and this is something we tell our users and partners, all of these approaches are perfectly valid. We encourage organizations to take what's useful to them, mix and match and repurpose in the ways that they know will work best for their organization and their community. Let's see here. So this is the link to the toolkit. If the digital readiness levels are the roadmap, the digital readiness toolkit is the tour guide. The levels help determine where somebody is and where they want to be. And then the toolkit is the set of resources that will help you get there. The toolkit and the levels are freely available online, along with a whole bunch of other stuff I'm about to tell you about, at a link that I think is in the chat at this moment, which is the Digital Readiness Toolkit link. And I will also say here that originally, when they first started on the strategic planning process and then the implementation process, the leadership team, the launch committee, the representatives of the community had this idea that what was really needed was just sort of like a web page with a directory of resources for folks to figure out, what they needed on their own. And continually, as we held these events and listening sessions and community conversations and surveys, we kept hearing that what folks really wanted was a comprehensive guide to digital projects from start to finish for somebody who is not experienced in digital projects. So that's what we did. The Digital Readiness Toolkit is available online in both web and PDF versions, which was also based on multiple requests from community members. And the toolkit's resources are set up to follow the digital readiness levels in the focus areas and tiers. So each focus area includes instructions, recommendations, templates, and links to more resources. These are just a few screenshots from the first focus area. In some cases, AV collections receive some special attention, but these materials need much more specialized instruction, which is where Kelly and her project come in. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Throughout the toolkit, you'll see here on the right side of the screen, we do have some boxes or resources specifically for content partners, for Recollection Wisconsin content partners, but an organization does not need to be a Recollection Wisconsin content partner in order to use the toolkit. These materials here are widely applicable to a wide range of audiences. Based on requests from community members, we also included many examples of other organizations' policies and documentation, and even a checklist to see all those types of documentation that we recommend they write as part of their digital project. We included references and direction to digital readiness case studies because community members indicated they wanted to see what other organizations are doing with their digital projects as a way to approach peer-to-peer learning. And I see Emily's putting links to both of those things in the chat right now too. Please don't feel like you need to go look at all this stuff right now. We're just giving you links. You can go look at it later if you would like. Toolkit users can navigate through the toolkit in a couple different ways. They can search or browse directly for the topics that they need to get to, like digitization standards or metadata requirements. Or they can start the planning process from the beginning using a digital project planning worksheet, which will guide them through the toolkit in each focus area. Another highly requested feature was this glossary of terms for people new to this terminology. This was a really big ask for, like, we heard it over and over and over, that people felt overwhelmed by the terminology, and knowing what a lot of these terms meant really helped them approach the information. So like all of the other features of the toolkit, the glossary was designed, drafted, and reviewed by a community of digital projects practitioners. And Emily's just put a link to that in the chat as well. So here's what we're doing with all of this information now that it's out in the world. Several cultural heritage organizations in Wisconsin are already using the toolkit and the levels. We've heard from the Wisconsin Humanities Council, from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. We just heard from the Sun Prairie Historical Society. These are folks that you may not all know, but they're different sizes of organizations, which is great because that means that this is applicable to lots of different kinds of work. We're presenting this toolkit and a way to get started with digitization projects at the Wisconsin Historical Society's local history conference in a couple of weeks. Improvements, we're planning on spending the next several months listening closely to these users of the toolkit and more, we hope. And we'd love to hear how these resources work for them. This informal information gathering is part of our supportive, community-driven model for this project. We'd also love to hear what you all think as people who are in similar situations as we are. We'd love to hear what you think today, if you have time to take a look at it, or if you want to look at the toolkit and email us, please do. We'd be glad to answer any questions you have or field suggestions you have for additional resources. And then finally, we are very excited to be partnering with the Community Archiving Workshop and Kelly Hicks for their input on self-assessments and advice for audiovisual materials, an area in which the current toolkit needs lots of guidance. So I'm going to pass this over to Kelly to tell you about how the Community Archiving Workshop is conducting their own digital readiness project. And then I think we'll do discussion and questions at the end. But if you have questions that are burning and can't wait, please feel free to pop those in the chat anytime. So if you would like to get in touch with us, please feel free to email us at info@recollectionwisconsin.org. And I'm going to skip right over to Kelly. Kelly, I think you're muted. I'm so sorry.
I am. Thank you. Thanks so much, Emily and Kristen, for the presentation. My name is Kelly Hicks, and I am a core member of the Community Archiving Workshop. Is anyone here familiar with Community Archiving Workshop already, or what we do? If you can just pop a comment in the chat or raise your hand. Okay. Well, today I'm going to just do a very brief introduction on who we are and what we do. And I really want to focus on the collaborative work that we're doing with Kristen and Emily. So I'll just give you the brief overview. So Kristen, can you advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. So what is the Community Archiving Workshop? This is Mona Jimenez, who is our icon and founder. Next slide, please. The Community Archiving Workshop is, we started out as a group of volunteers about 12 years ago, working with small organizations to help jumpstart audiovisual preservation, because it was noted by many, but brought to the attention especially of the vision of Mona Jimenez, that there was something that a group of archivists could really do as volunteers in a short amount of time to help small organizations just know how to begin with digitization. We focus on audiovisual materials, but we do sometimes work with other types of materials like photographs and paper. Since that very first workshop that Mona did, we have organically and not quite accidentally, but definitely organically grown into a much larger organization. We're now managing, I think, 3 federal grants and 1 other grant. So we're growing a lot. And we are really excited to be working with Wills on this amazing project, because the more that we grow, the more that we see that organizations are looking for help specifically with digitization. They always want to go to the next step, which is digitization. Okay, next slide, please. So we do not own claim to be the only community archiving workshop organization, nor do we have a copyright on those words, but we have a model that we've successfully been using for 12 years. It's responsive, it grows as the needs of organizations change, it grows as audiovisual collections age. And we share our resources with how to do this model. Our kind of flagship model is a one-day workshop in which we work with small collections to assess and inventory a collection and to answer further questions. But with grant and funding support, we've been able to build longer relationships with organizations. Some of those relationships now 4 or 5 years old, where we're walking through the step from inventorying and assessment all the way to beginning to work with people on digitization, which is really exciting. We are not just about, in our workshops that we put on, we are not just about getting quantitative work done. We are in the humanities after all. And so the workshops are a really great chance to meet local people, learn about local collections and history, to help a local organization gain better intellectual and physical control over AV collections, which is central to what we do. We also build community networks so that there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning going on. Increasingly, that's really important, as it is for most institutions and organizations now. And we have a lot of fun. So next slide, please. This map actually needs updating, I'm realizing, because this whole empty part of the country we are starting to populate with community archiving workshops. So this shows you a few of our community archiving workshops. This was from 2021. Okay, so I apologize for that, because since this map was made, we have workshops all over California, all over the Southwest, and all over my part of the country where I hail from, the Midwest. Next slide, please. We are a collective model, and all of our resources are available for free online at our website. So if you would like to, I'm going to put that link in the chat. And we are improving our website right now. It's not the easiest to navigate, and that will be remedied really soon. But if you want to put on a workshop or need some help, you can contact me, and there are lots of resources on our website. Okay, thank you. So for my last slide, I am going to just talk about our relationship and how we're working with Wills, and that is because we started in April, working with them to flesh out some areas of audiovisual preservation on the Digital Readiness Toolkit. And so we actually don't have anything complete to show you yet, so I'm going to tell you. One of the main things that we are working with, we have kind of, I guess, 3 parts to what we're doing. We're helping to expand the toolkit's audiovisual resources, because as many of you probably know, if you have AV collections, the technical skill and the technical learning curve is far higher with AV than it is with, for example, paper. And also you have obsolete technology like VHS decks that are no longer made and are extremely difficult to have repaired. You have to have those to even see what you have on a tape. So unlike a photograph that you can say, this is important, you have no idea oftentimes. So what we think is that with AV, you often have to step back a few steps and kind of start from a more, more holistic approach, I think. And you also have such a greater amount of technology to learn that we're helping to expand the toolkit so that we can help demystify that process with people who want to use the toolkit. We're also looking at the glossary to put some more AV specific terms there. And the third thing that we're doing is something that's become a bigger part of the project than we expected, which is a massive collaborative writing project, which is an audiovisual self-assessment survey. And hopefully this could be used for anyone, but we're focusing on AV. And so this is a tool to sort of help those with AV step back and really assess their AV collections as part of their whole collection. And I think a lot of people with AV materials need a little more help figuring out what project they're even going to start on first. So should it be access? Should it be, if the tape is degrading, should I even focus on whether or not I have the copyright? Should I just go ahead and digitize it? How do I get a machine to digitize it? So with the self-assessment survey, we invite folks with AV to step back and really take a few breaths and go through a little bit of a longer process. We really are, the hope is that this will help people to access the toolkit with AV and find the resources that they need, because there are so many great resources in the Digital Readiness Toolkit. And I just, I'm talking really abstractly. So in order to make this more clear, I would like to tell you a very short story. So this is the story of organization A, and this is our dream for how the tools that we create could work with the Digital Readiness Toolkit. So organization A is an organization some of you might be able to relate to. It has a collection of 500 VHS tapes documenting their organization's history. They aren't sure of the copyright of the tapes. They know they want to digitize the tapes and that the material is unique, and they know that they want to make them accessible. They aren't sure where to get the equipment to play back the tapes, and they don't know what file size to use or file types to use. And they're really worried about how big AV files are, because they also don't have any storage and they're not sure how to get funding for storage. Last but not least, they don't even know how they would stream video, because to stream video requires specific platforms, and they also don't have funding for a platform. So they've decided that they would like to use the Digital Readiness Toolkit and all of this suite of amazing tools to figure out where they should start. So they take the AV self-assessment survey to help them figure out where they can begin using the toolkit. Organization A goes through the self-assessment, and they look at the focus levels that Emily and Kristen went over. They determine that they're a bronze level in focus area 1, project planning, because they haven't completed the recommended key activity, create an item level inventory. They determine they're also a bronze in focus area 6, store and maintain, because they haven't completed the key activity, determine where digital collections are stored, or create an inventory to track digital collections. They also determine they are a bronze. Bronze is great, but they want to be silver. So they're a bronze in focus area 3, digitize, because they haven't yet completed the recommended step, digitize your most fragile and unique assets. So after the self-assessment, organization A determines that what they really need to do is create an item level inventory and a way to track their digital files before they go ahead and digitize. So they name the project the VHS inventory project. They go to the toolkit's project planning worksheet. They plan how to create their inventory. They find an inventory template in the toolkit. They use the template. Then they attend their online community of practice webinar, which is something we'll also have, which is inspired by and modeled after the community of practice webinar that Wills did. So they attend the community of practice webinar. They meet another local organization who happens to have a workshop space. They decide to do an inventory workshop day. And by the end of the summer, they've completed their first project, which is to inventory the VHS collection. So that is the story of how we hope this will all work. And I'll add one more thing, which is that we are also going to be piloting this addition, this part that we're working on and the resources that we're working on. We're piloting those with 12 organizations. That's a lot, to make sure that this is accessible and makes sense. So that's all I have. Thanks so much.
I love that story. It's a great story. It's a great demonstration of how this all works together. Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome. Thanks.
So I think at this point, we'd love to open it up and hear from you all. What do you think? Do you have questions? Do you have thoughts? Do you think this is something that would be useful in your hub, or does your hub already have something along these lines? Anybody who wants to unmute and or turn on their camera, or both, or pop into chat, any of those communication techniques are great.
I was just going to say at the Minnesota Digital Library, we're super excited about it.
Thanks.
And very interested in digging into it and seeing, how it might be a helpful resource for us to point our contributors to as well. So I think you did a great job of laying out the different steps, and because we get these kind of questions all the time. So thank you for doing all that work, and we're really excited to learn more about it and see how it might fit for our contributors too.
And we would also love to hear if you're sharing it or how it's being used. That really helps us too to know where it is out in the world.
For sure. We'll be in touch.
Emily says in the chat, this sounds awesome for orgs that have not started contributing content to their hub, and current partners will undoubtedly have something to learn also. That, Emily, that's exactly what we heard from lots of different people. And that's why we set it up to be for what we hope are potential content partners and also current content partners. And then John Sarnowski says, the Res Carta Foundation has been supporting scan days around the state for years. We can provide equipment and software, and he provides his email address, info@rescarta.org. Thanks, John. And something that we would love to do in the future is to start helping the community compile a list of like shared equipment and how that can be used. That's a future state project, but we'll definitely keep that in mind when we start looking at that. All right, well, we don't have to keep everybody, just waiting in anticipation for the next, question or comment. So I'm not sure how we should proceed next. Emily, should we just stick around until like 12:45 and see if anybody wants to comment?
Well, if nobody has any other questions, we'll stick around if you do have follow-up questions for us, but you're welcome to sign off. I know that this has been recorded, and I assume the DPLA team will share this out later. But thanks for joining us. And yeah, like we said, we welcome feedback. We'd also love to hear if you're using this or sharing it with your partners. But yeah, please be in touch. We'll hang out here for a few more minutes, but you're welcome to take off. And have a great rest of your week.
I see a question from Sean Lanksberry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that just popped in. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. I think there is, you know what? I can't remember if there's already a file naming convention in the toolkit. I think there is.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll definitely talk about that with AV.
Mm-hmm. So Sean's question, just for the recording, is this is a great tool. I think one area that often needs a lot of support and explanation is file management and naming convention practices. Thoughts on integrating this into the toolkit? Sean, we totally agree. It's in the describe section of the toolkit. There's some examples of different types of file naming conventions. And some like high level recommendations for file organization. So if you take a look at it and you think that there's more that could or should be added, please feel free to let us know.
I also think that this is such a great point, because something we've been talking about a lot is that digital projects don't always mean digitization, that they often mean going back to the digital collections that you already have. Or you may have had something digitized and maybe it came from a vendor and you're not sure about the file naming or how the vendor organized the files. And I just think it's really good for us all to remember that sometimes a digital project is going back through and cleaning up, there's no analog involved. Like it's all cleanup of what you already have or moving things off of hard drives onto servers. So I know with AV, we really encourage people to think beyond the digitization process.
Especially because some folks, not even just cleaning up legacy projects, but they might get CDs and DVDs and jump drives donated, and then they have to deal with all kinds of file management stuff for already digital files, born digital files.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I know with AV, something that can be really challenging is if you have an organization that is creating new content, which almost everyone is doing now, you know, recording events that you have, etc. And even just deciding, am I going to take in all the production elements or just one final file? Am I taking in all the outtakes, all the Final Cut or Adobe edit files? Making a decision about what production elements you're taking on, that's another huge digital project that most of us need to be thinking about, or we are going to run out of storage.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So Kelly, I had a question for you. Hi again. Um, I noticed on your map that you had a pin in Minneapolis, and I was wondering who you had worked with in the Twin Cities community, if you remember.
We worked with, yes, we worked, I'm sorry, let me use my.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay. It's my pre-COVID time, the before times.
With the before
memory.
times, right?
If you give me 1 minute, I know I can
Oh,
figure
no
it out.
problem.
I'm sure.
Sorry.
I think that was outside of Minneapolis, and it was at the ATOM
Mm.
meeting in, I think, 2018 at the
Okay.
Association of Tribal Libraries, Archives, and
Okay.
Museums. And I
Okay.
am blanking on our partner's name, but
Okay.
I'll look.
Okay. I was just curious who you had worked with in the area.
I mean, I love Minneapolis and I would love to go back and work with anyone. So
Come visit anytime, Haley.
in the summer, thank you. But yeah, what a great city. And there must be so many cool collections in Minneapolis.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are in the
I'll
Twin
have to
Cities and in
And
Minnesota as a whole. So yeah,
yeah.
we're fortunate to work with many of them, but always looking for new partners too. So, and if there's ways that would be, there's people that you are working with that would be a good fit for us to work with too, or if you know people who are, I don't know, the Minnesota Digital Library is again, an online collection of digitized archival materials, and we work with over 200 organizations throughout the state. So, and we do have AV stuff up in our collection as well. We have everything.
Okay.
We
Great.
do provide digital services, if someone works with us, generally.
We
Digitization services.
We have looked at your digitization services model quite a bit as we've been figuring out how we want to approach something or not approach something like it.
Right.
Caitlin, did you want to jump in? I see you're unmuted. Nope. Okay.
Well, again, thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
All right, well, should we wrap up and send you on your way? Thank you, Kristen and Kelly, for sharing. Thank you, Shanae and DPLA for hosting this. And we're happy again to take feedback and questions, and hopefully see you at a DPLA event again soon.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Good to see you too.
Okay.